everybody, welcome to Let's Talk Assassin's Creed, your number one podcast for all things Assassin's Creed. In today's topic, thanks to G Assassin on Twitter for the podcast idea, I'm going to be taking a quick look at the Mythology Trilogy and offering the good and the bad in my point of view, and why I think the Mythology Trilogy saved the series. As always, everything discussed in this episode is completely my own opinion. If you would like to have a discussion about anything discussed or offer your own thoughts, there'll be links at the end of the show for you to reach out to me and have a good discussion. So, for people who are unsure of all these terms, because Assassin's Creed is usually just Assassin's Creed 1, 2, 3, and so on, sometimes they are given little nicknames for the arcs they follow. So, an Origins to Valhalla has been nicknamed the Ancient Trilogy or the Mythology Trilogy, and we go more for the Mythology Trilogy because the games have focused more on mythology and Isu lore around mythology, which is a unique concept, but one that Assassin's Creed needed to do, in my opinion. So how this episode is going to work is I'm going to go over the bad, the good, and then why I believe it's saves the series. So 3 parts. It's kind of a hard one because I've been playing Assassin's Creed 1 recently on Xbox 360, still loving it. Then I watched Let's Plays and remember playing Valhalla and I loved it. So I am in the mindset that Assassin's Creed 1 to Valhalla is just amazing. The games aren't always perfect. I will not sit here and say all the games are perfect, go buy them, because I think a lot of games have made mistakes. But I think Assassin's Creed has come a long way for the better. So let's just jump in really simply. The bad of the Mythology Trilogy. What's the bad that's happened? And to be honest, I can only see 2 major flaws for the Mythology series. One is a double-edged one that I'll explain when I discuss it, but the first important one that I think kind of ruined the Mythology Trilogy a little for me, not completely where I won't play it, but kind of annoyed me, and that's missed opportunities. And the reason why I say missed opportunities is Assassin's Creed Origins had the perfect recipe for giving us the legendary tale of Aya. We know in Assassin's Creed 2, with the legendary assassins under the villa, we know that Aya was a legendary assassin that killed Cleopatra. And sadly, when we got Origins, we were geared up for this amazing origin story of a legendary assassin that would help create the Brotherhood. And this was, in my eyes, a great story. But sadly, they shifted focus and created a duo-style origin story for the Brotherhood with Bayek and Aya. But Aya was kind of more sidelined over Bayek's story. And I kind of feel like this was a missed opportunity. Aya had the perfect opportunity to give a story that she could have grown with. We could have seen her impact and why she was so revered for the Brotherhood. I know Odyssey, I believe, tried to tie this with Darius, her being a descendant of Darius, and maybe that's why. That's my own speculation, but I'm still not sure. I think it was a great missed opportunity for Aya to be ignored. So, alongside Aya, the second biggest missed opportunity for the series was Cassandra. Cassandra's story is fantastic, but sadly her canonical story is locked to a novel. And that is a big missed opportunity because we know with Valhalla there's a good system for choice, but a very cohesive linear story that follows. Whereas Odyssey's story is very much based on choice with multiple endings. And it's kind of a missed opportunity that Cassandra didn't get that canonical linear story like Valhalla has with Eivor, and instead people had to find out which ending was better. And some people never actually get the canonical ending if they don't check a guide, and I think that's a great missed opportunity. The second missed opportunity is the DLCs did a lot of great work figuring on the mythology of the Isu and the legend of the Brotherhood with Darius, but it missed an opportunity for the DLC to focus on Cassandra's journey. After we know what happened to Cassandra at the end of Odyssey, it would have been nice to see DLC that flash through Cassandra's life going forward in time, instead of just focusing DLC around Darius and mythology. And I do really think The Fate of Atlantis was a perfect DLC for the setup for Isu, and I'm not going to deny that. But I think they could have done Fate of Atlantis first, and then after Fate of Atlantis, we could have had a series called Flashbacks. And because they did episodic DLCs, flashbacks could have been 3 episodes of Cassandra's life up till she meets the Eagle Bearer, Layla. It's kind of a wacky one. Could they have done it? How could they have done it? I don't know. But I think they missed an opportunity with Odyssey there, that it was a good game. Some mechanics weren't perfect, but they could have made the story more cohesive, in my opinion, and they could have focused DLCs on what happened next. Because we know with Origins they had the next DLC, which was the Brotherhood DLC, which explored the Brotherhood after the game, so it felt more like an epilogue instead of an added content. So we know Assassin's Creed can do episodic content, so they should have done episodic content for Cassandra. So they're the only two. That's one of the major points. I mean, the other major one that I think is a double-edged is evolution. From Assassin's Creed 1 to Syndicate, the series always evolved, but it's apparently it never stuck to its evolutions. A lot of stuff added in 3 and in Black Flag was never implemented later, and such on. And Origins is a really great, and it was classed at the time, soft reboot that was perfect for what followed Syndicate. But Odyssey evolved too quick, in my opinion. Odyssey went from a linear story, open world that worked, to multiple choice, very heavy RPG, very build-based gameplay, which I didn't like so much, but I didn't mind because I'm used to playing RPGs. But in my opinion, that's too much of a fast evolution. When I play Valhalla, I've always linked Valhalla to Origins' true sequel. And the reason I say that is I'm not discounting Odyssey, because I do love Odyssey. I love its story, I love its world. I just don't like some mechanics. But the reason why I call it a true link is I feel the evolution steps that Valhalla took feel like they're more of a slower take from Origins. But when you play Valhalla after Odyssey, I feel like some mechanics have gone back, because it's back to a linear skill tree where it's not build based, you can have every skill like Origins. Some of the abilities do feel like Odyssey, but the way the world feels and the way it acts, it does feel like an Origins game sequel than a sequel to Odyssey, which is kind of hard to word, but I felt a sequel to Odyssey would be a bit more choice system, a lot more in-depth bounty system, a lot more skill-based system, a lot more gear-based system, where Valhalla did things better and made it so it wasn't a loot fest. It wasn't, can you build an assassin build, can you build a warrior build, because everyone can have the same build in Valhalla. It just depends on how you want to make it. It's not like you've got to keep checking stats all the time, even though there is some stats in Valhalla that I've never paid attention to. So I do just feel that the Mythology Trilogy just try to advance way too evolve too fast from Origins to Odyssey. Again, I do like Mythology. I'm going to keep repeating it because I'm worried that you may listen to this and think, well, I'm hating on them, so I must not like them. But I do like them. I just think I wish Odyssey was a bit more akin to Origins and less jumpy so ahead, because there is some mechanics I don't like, and honestly, I like the story in the world. I just don't like all the build based system. It's very clunky in places. So, and it is a bit of a weird one because I'm going to later on praise Evolution, which is very weird. So it's double edged. I think it evolved too fast between Origins and Odyssey, but I do think, and this is where my 3 good points will come in, I do think the Evolution was best. So what I mean by evolution is the games have done a lot for the years, but Assassin's Creed 3 and Assassin's Creed Black Flag gave us basically open world with crafting. There was base management with the Grand Iguana island and the homestead in 3, and they had really nice big lush worlds that were bigger. But then Unity and Syndicate went back to smaller single city based maps, which they were quite big and quite dense, I'm not going to lie. And it really had a nice gear system. And then when Origins came out, they took everything from that. They had a sort of gear system with a gear, but it didn't really matter what gear you wore. I think I practically wore one set all the way through. I had a good open world like Origins and not Origins, like Black Flag and Assassin's Creed 3 started. So it felt like a really good evolution. It felt like the series was evolving where it needed to be. One of the worst parts of the series by Syndicate, I didn't mind it until Syndicate, was combat. I felt the combat was becoming too repetitive, and I do feel like Syndicate's combat is good in places, but it feels a bit arcadey. So it was good to see having a new combat system that made you feel like an assassin. And I know the old combat of counter kill, 2 button system was good. I really liked the idea of being an assassin, a proto assassin. I mean, dodging the battlefield, judging when to use my heavy, my light attacks. I felt like I owned the battlefield as an assassin, so if I did stealth, it was my way. If I did combat, it was my way. I feel like the story finally evolved somewhere different, which is really great because I'm going to get a lot of hate for this episode, I can tell you. The story from 1 to Syndicate was great. It was a good overall modern day until Unity and Syndicate, which I won't discuss. But the series focused too heavily on just Assassins versus Templars, and that was nice because it is Assassin's Creed. But I wanted to know a bit more about the Isu. We know there was the Doomsday Prophecy in 2012 that Desmond stopped. We do know the Isu temples. We saw a bit of the Isu, and then Juno was going to come back, and that was shelved to Transmedia. And it got to Syndicate where I personally felt that the games had spent too much on Assassins and Templars, and not enough on other aspects of their world. This game series was built on Assassins, Templars, Freedom vs. Control, Freedom vs. Order, and Isus. And then to have all the games do Assassins vs. Templars, tiny dash of Isu, and then Freedom through Control. And then you get Origins, which is the evolution of the Brotherhood, how it started, was really great. It was fresh. It was not that Assassins vs. Templar story we're used to. It's a proto version, but seeing the Brotherhood birthed for the first time was brilliant. This is the hidden ones. These what become the assassins in the 11th century. This is fantastic. Odyssey, even though I don't like some mechanics, did a great job of implementing the Isu again. What they set up with the Empirical Truth and Origins carried over to how the Isu were coming back was kind of what I took from Althea. Was fantastic. And then Valhalla, again, great. Gave us this amazing, and I will give another shout out to Six Keys who really summed this up great on Twitter. Freedom versus control. Eivor trying to escape her fate. Fate is order, and she's fighting for freedom. The central theme for Assassin's Creed. She's not an assassin like Edward in Black Flag. She's helping them. But the story and the Isu story weaved in was just magical. And it just felt that the series was evolving fluidly. And I do, as I said, it's a double edge because I feel, again, the evolution was rushed. Well, wasn't handled correctly from Origins to Odyssey. But I do feel that the series has evolved in a good way. It's followed the story. It needs to go back to an assassin route. I want to play as an assassin, but I like seeing extra aspects of the series and extra things that build it up. I don't want the series to become a series where we have to only play Assassins vs. Templars in the main title, and if we want to know why the Isu are doing this or why Templars doing this, we have to then go buy a spin-off. I think that is a very detrimental idea for the series, which is why I'm not a very big fan of spin-offs. I think the main series should follow as many footpaths as it can, as long as it ties to the central themes of Assassin's Creed. The second big thing that I love about the game, which is slight hindrance, but the care they've taken to update mechanics. I know parkour and stealth has taken a little bit of a hit, and I do miss that, but I like to see that they've tried to change the mechanics around, make the game feel fresh and exciting. What's different, what's new? They've always added new stuff all the way through, but a lot of stuff by Syndicate was still the same. So having Origins to Valhalla where new stuff is added, there's a new combat system to try, which I think they need to stop on. They need to go back to stealth and um, parkour, but a new combat system. The new world style was really good. I think there was a new camera angle introduced. I'm not sure. A new pacing for the story. So it's really good how they just managed to tweak mechanics. Is what I'm trying to say. Is what's the good point is that they've tweaked mechanics and made them better and made them more fluid. The third good point is a weird one, and I'm going to say it's risk taking. Origins was classed as a soft reboot, and I'm not pardon me. I'm not 100% sure why it was classed as a soft reboot, but I know it was, and it must have been a very big risk for them to say Egypt is too boring, we're not going to do it, but then do it. So that was a big risk, but I also think it was a big risk to abandon a very central theme of Assassin's Templars and show us a new side to that, because I believe how we know in history the Heshans, which is assassins, was set up in the 11th century. To stick with assassins versus Templars, you can only go forward from the 11th century, which is pretty much every game after Assassin's Creed 1. So going backwards was a very risky move because you couldn't essentially have assassins, you had to have a new brotherhood, which is why I think Hidden Ones works, because the Hidden Ones are pretty much just what the assassins are. They hide in plain sight, they have their tenets, they have their creed, it's just the name's not evolved yet. So I think that was a great big risk they took, and in my opinion, a risk that paid off. So the final part of the series is one that I think is slightly controversial, but I believe hand on heart that the Mythology series isn't perfect, as I've explained with the flaws, and I don't think all the mechanics in the Mythology series are the best. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I do think Valhalla has some work to do on parkour and stealth. Odyssey had some work to do on the choice mechanics they added. But overall, I believe that the series was saved by Origins and Odyssey and Valhalla. If we look from a numbers point of view, we can see that since Origins, the sales for Assassin's Creed has gone through the roof. More people are jumping into Assassin's Creed and they're enjoying it, and it's a great thing. I've had friends who've joined through Odyssey, loved Odyssey, then gone back to play the older games and come back to me and said, you know what, I love them all. And that's so great to hear that Origins, Odyssey, or Valhalla, whatever you get into, isn't putting people off from going backwards. It's actually getting people who think, you know what, I looked at Assassin's Creed 2 or I looked at Unity, I wasn't interested, but I did enjoy what was being set up in Valhalla, so I'm going to go try them again, see if I can piece some of that lore I'm missing, and they enjoy it. And that is a great pivotal moment for the series. That's the series growing a fan base, and growing a fan base is always great for a series. It's so great to say to a friend who said, "Nah, I don't like Black Flag. It's just a piratey game. Not interested." To then replay Black Flag after Origins because they got hooked on the idea of Origins, and then saying, "Oh my God, Edward is a fantastic character. His growth, I was wrong about this just being a pirate game. It's a really good theme." That's the sort of stories I've heard from friends who've jumped in from Origins, Odyssey, or Valhalla, and that's a perfect reason. It shows that the series by Syndicate, to a lot of people, including me, was getting stale. It was a very stagnant story of assassins versus Templars, one good, one bad. Assassins always win. Rogue and Black Flag were the exceptions. I will point that out. But there was always a central theme of Isu in the background. Not much different. Combat didn't really change that much until Unity, where it was a bit more robust, but it was less counter based. But I still feel Unity's was a bit clunkier. Syndicate was weird, arcadey, Arkham Knight combat. I don't know what it did there. But the whole puppeteer system, the way the world was designed, it felt like none of the evolution attempts stuck. What they did in 3 and Black Flag didn't stick. There was no more homestead. I know there's Unity has a cafe, and the train hideout, but what they did with the and the Great Iguana and the Homestead didn't really stick. The open world idea didn't seem to really stick either. I do think worlds need to be slightly smaller, I think some at times, but I think because as I praise with risk taking, I feel like the risks they took with the Mythology Trilogy to go beyond this identity, and it has proven an identity crisis in some areas, I won't lie, but to expand their identity from a puppeteer based system gameplay, set in history, set in very small one to one maps, with a very simplistic story of good versus evil, assassins versus Templars. It's great that they just say, you know what, but what if we looked at the Brotherhood themselves and how the assassins became into existence? Let's take that, let's do a big map and let's try it. Let's give the Isus some more light. You know, we've had sages, but they've come and gone. Not much has really hit, and we've had them crop up now and then, but then it's not our big focus. Our big focus is the assassins racing against the clock or beating the Templars. Let's try something new. You know, even Valhalla, spoiler, added sages again. You know, that's something we haven't seen in Black Flag. Black Flag also touched on the idea of what would it be, what would a world be like if a character saw both sides to the coin. They didn't have a control over the coin themselves. They just could see the impact the assassins had and the impact the Templars. And Edward was in the middle. He joined the Templars at first with glory. Then he aligned with the assassins to help him after he felt bad of leading them to the hideout. And it created this great mashup of grey area. But the series didn't explore that. The next game, you have Anna who becomes an assassin. So again, he's just an assassin. Then you had Evie and Jacob, assassins. There was no more nuance that Black Flag added. Black Flag had the nuance of somebody new, an outsider. And that's the nuance that I believe the Mythology series captured. They took the risk to explore new light. And I think this is what saved the series. If Origins was a puppeteer based game that had the very same mechanics to the old game, the very same engine style from Syndicate, I don't know how they could do it in Egypt, but maybe Assassin's Creed 1 style with 3 cities like Alexandria and stuff like that. It's a very small map about the Brotherhood. I don't think it would have worked so much. I think the reason why Origins was such a big hit to people was it had the assassin story, it had the birth of the Brotherhood, but it gave people a huge world to explore, a huge depth to the combat. You know, you couldn't just get away with standing and letting 20 guards run at you and just press 2 buttons and you're done, go home, go to someone else. You had to be thoughtful. If you picked on 20 guards, you've got to know you've got to take them out. And in some areas, I feel personally I was forced to adopt stealth. In the older games, I used stealth all the time because it was fun, but I wasn't bothered getting to combat because I was overpowered. I just had to press circle and square for counter kill. Some enemies you had to attack, but as I tried with Assassin's Creed 1 on the 360 last night, I mashed the square button 6 times and my sword kept being deflected, and the combat took ages just doing that, and I had to hold the square. But if I pressed circle and countered, B and X to counter, it felt faster, more fluid, and it was cooler, but it's a 2 combat system. There was that attack and heavy attack system in it, but it was just easier and more simplistic to go into high profile and do a counter kill. It was faster, it was more flashy and more cooler than just keep mashing them. But Origins captured that flashy type kills that you got with the combat system, and Valhalla does it, but I think Valhalla needs to, slow down on them because some of them take too long. But it had that flashiness to it, but it was more nuanced. You had to use the battlefield. And I personally feel that type of combat makes you feel like an assassin. You have to then choose the battlefield. I don't think an assassin in real life would just standing in a circle, wait for 20 guards to run at them and just quickly dismember them and just by countering them. I'd think they would have to use tools or actually use the battlefield to their advantage. It's something that Arno did. He used more of a fencing style to parry, and it worked really well in my opinion. But I think it just needed a bit more focus. Now I know parkour and stealth has taken a tiny bit of a hit, and I do want it to improve. I have felt stealth in Valhalla. I've probably stealthed more in Valhalla than I did the older games, just because it kind of feels more rewarding just to sneak around this big world. It's the same magic that Assassin's Creed 3 captured, where you could be out in the wilderness, in the frontier, see some British or French soldiers, and you hide in a bush or you hide in a tree, and you take them out stealthily. Or there was a guard on a pier in Assassin's Creed 3 that shot a barrel and it exploded. That was fun. That's like a world stealth mixed in, and I feel like that magic was captured again in Valhalla because you had the whole world, but it really wasn't there in Syndicate or Unity because I feel Syndicate and Unity focus more on the parkour and getting around than actual combat and stealth. Well, not stealth. I didn't really stealth much, even though it was Eagle Vision, which I really missed Eagle Vision from Odyssey. It didn't have it, which sucked. But it's good. It's back. It's back, and I hope it's staying back. So essentially, what I'm trying to say is that I think the games from 1 to Valhalla are great. Some are better than others. Some mechanics I like, some mechanics I don't like. But I essentially feel that if Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla was just another puppeteer system game with Assassins vs Templar storyline set after the 11th century, I don't think the series would have lasted as long. I believe, in my personal opinion, the reason the series survived and is thriving is because Ubisoft took the risk, shedded a basic puppeteer system, which I do like, but I think the puppeteer system was kind of difficult at times. But they've shedded that for a more simplistic, light, heavy system. It's a bit more ability based, which I don't like, because I think some abilities should be tools and shouldn't be like a mana wheel, which I've discussed with people in the past. And I don't think it's perfect, but I feel like the risk they took to make bigger worlds, explore new stories, make the combat feel a bit more thoughtful instead of just a 2 combat system, is what kind of helped people. And choosing history that you wouldn't expect Assassin's Creed to choose, Greece, Egypt, I don't think they would have worked if it was a 1-to-1 city. I think they could work Black Flag or Assassin's Creed 1 style, or Assassin's Creed 3 where you could go different locations, but I don't think it would have worked Unity or Syndicate style of 1-to-1 cities. But new combat definitely helped. Exploring nuanced ideas, how did the Brotherhood start? What would the assassins be before the Hashans was created in the 11th century? Finally giving the Isu a bit more light, instead of just Isu being third wheel. Black Flag made them sages, there was some sages in Unity, but it felt third wheel. The whole focus of the games was Assassins vs Templars. When now the Isu are kind of like more in your face, it kind of brings a bit magic back. It's like, okay, why are the Isu here? We know they're better than humans, we know they're smarter, but what is their goal? We know they got intervened the last time to stop the 2012 apocalypse, so why are we getting them now? Why are you shedding the assassins a little bit and focusing on Isu? It's got that mystery back, in my opinion. And finally, I believe just the whole, as I'm repetitive, is risk taking. Going forward to new ideas is just so helpful for any series. You have an identity you have to keep, I will agree, but there's no harm in pushing the boundaries of stretching your identity. Valhalla isn't perfect, and I will always use that. I don't think there's any of the Assassin's Creed games are perfect. I think some have flaws. I think they all have their own personal flaws, but I think they're all great, fantastic games. That's why I always rate them number one joint. I don't have a favourite system of I prefer 1-1-1 or they all are joint top for me. But I feel like Valhalla was the first steps of making deep Assassin's Creed style mechanics into an RPG. The guaranteed assassination was an accessibility setting. This gave OG fans like me the chance to be a one-shot assassin again. Perfect. So I think next game, if they make more tools, make a little bit more accessibility settings, it would just be perfect. The story was perfect and everything. So that's all we got time for in this episode. If you would like to discuss everything if you would like to discuss everything discussed today, then please find me on Twitter at ACLet'sTalk, or you can email me at assassin'screedletstalk@gmail.com. If you have any ideas, you know where to find me. I'm always up for your ideas. Thanks, G Assassin, for the idea. And I hope you all enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you all next week.